Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Uncensored Critic podcast. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. It means the world to me. Thank you very, very much. And today we welcome along another director by the name of Audrey Sheffield. And let's take a moment to introduce Audrey and her work. Audrey is an award-winning UK and international freelance director with a passion for new work, committed to making theatre that is rigorous, ambitious, and truthful, creating art that makes us feel more deeply. She studied Psychology and Anthropology, followed by an MSc in Medical Anthropology. Theatre-wise, she trained for 3 years alongside the late Sam Kogan in London and Moscow. She continued her directing training at the Young Vic, King's Head Theatre, and workshops at the National Theatre Studio, the RSC, and one workshop in particular with Mr. Peter Brook himself. She also co-facilitated the National Theatre's New Views programme for new writers at the National and on reading panels for the Women's Prize Playwriting. She was also selected as Best Director Finalist for Off West End Awards 2017 to 18 and the Arts Foundation Awards in 2018. And other directing credits include 6 Artists in Search of an Author at the Almeida, Perspective at the National, Jews in Their Own Words at the Royal Court with Jonathan Freeland, and Associate Director on the West End production of Stranger Things, The First Shadow. Catch also her voice on video games as well, and there's more to come on that in the future. She's worked with Ubisoft, Amazon Games, CD Projekt Red, and Kuro. And she's also worked with the likes of Ian Rickson, Carrie Cracknell, Rupert Gold, Mark Ravenhill, and Elizabeth Comte. And in Ian Rickson's own words here, Audrey is one of the most lucid, clear-thinking directors of our industry. She has a compassionate presence and a forensic eye for the details of behaviour, acquired from her own rigorous training and exploratory practice. Her work on stage is dynamic, moving, and alive. So, Audrey, hello.
Hi. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's quite a CV you've got there, mate.
Thank you. I'm gonna mention one thing in there, which is in terms of you won't be able to hear my voice in video games, thankfully.
Oh, sorry, I do beg your pardon.
No, it's okay. But it's my work in that is as a voice director. So I'll work. So you'll hear the actors who I've worked with voices, but not mine, thankfully. For
Okay, cool. No, let me rephrase. She has directed video games as well as more than that to come in the future.
Yeah, no worries. I've put it out there that I'm definitely not acting in anything.
Yeah, okay. I think that's my fault there. I do apologize.
No.
But anyway, so Audrey, where did it all come from? The love of being in the arts, directing. Where did it all start for you?
It started. Looking back now, thinking about it, I think there were lots of little things along the way, but I wasn't one of those kids that grew up knowing that I wanted to work in the arts or thinking that I wanted to work as a director. I don't even really think I knew anything about the job of a director. But I was really lucky to be able to see theatre as a kid. I remember going every year. We used to visit not every year, but several years we would visit my grandmother who lived in New York, and it was around Christmas time. So I remember seeing The Nutcracker every Christmas. We'd see a production of that, and I remember the magic of that, I suppose, and the thrill of the theatre and everybody there watching together and what we were about to see, the excitement, the anticipation of that. There's also a moment I remember at school going to see a production of Hiawatha. Again, I don't remember anything really about the show. I think I remember the moment before it started, or just as it was about to start. I remember the darkness and the excitement of like the anticipation of what we were about to see. And then I just kind of remember drumming and smoke and just the thrill of that. So again, I think those are kind of two things when I kind of look back at theatre and how lucky I was to have been able to see those productions, and I guess to experience the thrill of live theatre in that way and the magic of it. I grew up really, really interested in people and thinking and why we behave the way we do, why we think the way we do. So I actually, from quite a young age, was really interested in psychology and anthropology, and I actually studied psychology and anthropology in a joint degree. And it was actually through a boyfriend, a long-term boyfriend at the time, who'd always wanted to act. He was studying acting with a Ukrainian director teacher called Sam Kogan at a very small drama school that no longer exists in North London in Seven Sisters
Mm.
called the Science of Acting.
Mm.
And it was founded and ran by this amazing, extraordinary man called Sam Kogan. And my boyfriend said, I think you'll really, I'm not even sure why, but he basically said, I think you'd really enjoy this. And so I remember going to like just a kind of taster session there. And for some reason, I think it was one of those moments where lots of things just kind of came together and kind of clicked in and just
Yeah.
aligned for me. There was something about the way that he spoke about the work and the what he was interested in, what he was studying. So Sam Kogan was trained by a pupil of Stanislavski's called Maria Knebel.
Ah,
So he translated a lot of Stanislavski's work, and actually through that he became really fascinated by something within or sort of he was really interested in the thinking that we can't see. So I guess what we would call the subconscious, or what he would call invisible thinking. So thinking that we weren't aware of, but that there was clear evidence of its presence, if that makes sense. And so
okay.
he talked about that quite a lot, and he was really, really interested and very dedicated to exploring and finding out more and more about that. And I just remember there was something in that introductory session with him where suddenly I just remember sitting there and just thinking, this is it. This
Mm.
is the thing. And there wasn't like one of those people that was like on a mission to find the thing that I don't remember kind of looking for something in particular, but I do remember, let's say, studying psychology and studying anthropology. And as I was doing it, looking back, I was looking for something, but it never quite aligned with my expectation or my anticipation or what I think I thought I would get from those things. And
Okay.
somehow it's probably because I only was doing it, at an undergraduate level. So I never really got into, I was like, oh, I really wanted to kind of explore the darker side of the psyche and abnormal psychology. And there were lots of things that really fascinated me. I remember at school, one of my A levels was art history, and I was really interested in, I remember doing like a dissertation on psychedelic art. I was interested in the mind, um, and there was just something about what happened in that moment, something probably about what he said and all the things that I thought and maybe unawarely was looking for and wanting to really pursue and find out more about. And somehow just in that moment, everything kind of clicked. And I just thought, this is the thing. And so it was very kind of step by step for me. And
Yeah.
so I kind of followed that and was lucky to be able to follow that, and studied with Sam Kogan for 4 years. So I did it was a directing course, but it was an acting and directing course. I had to learn about the acting process, unfortunately for everybody around. So I had to
That'd be
do that
silly. That'd be
side
silly.
and kind of um, learn about the technique and approach and really understand what an actor's process is or can be. Um, and so I was very lucky to be able to study there for 4 years. Our fourth year was creating or directing our own productions and acting in each other's. So that fourth year was really dedicated to rehearsal process, and then productions at the end of that as well.
Okay.
And then, yeah, and I kind of got the bug from there, really. And I was just absolutely, yeah, fascinated by, and I guess again, looking back as well, all kids do, but just my experiences with acting in primary school. I was very shy, sort of growing up from kind of secondary school, sort of through
Mm.
kind of adolescence onwards. I wasn't particularly confident in terms of, I wasn't the teenager that was in drama clubs or societies, or at university. I wasn't taking part in any of that. I really just didn't think it was for me. But
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
primary school, I kind of fell
I was the
into a
same.
couple of
I was the
school
same.
plays. Were you? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And everyone's route in is so different. But I can also remember a couple of like formative kind of experiences within primary school age, being involved in, let's say, school play, or
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
sort of out of school as well. And again, the kind of excitement, the thrill of that, the kind of magic of being part of something bigger than yourself, but also the magic of theatre, I think, and live performance. And so I think it was just all of those things really sort of coming together, and somehow managed to align in that studio classroom where I just suddenly thought, this is the thing, and then kind of just kept, stepping forwards from there. So I graduated from there, and I had my children close together soon after that.
Mhm.
And so during that time was working kind of part-time teaching in drama schools a little. Uh,
Mhm.
and then just thought, look, I know I want to work, I want to have a go at sort of stepping out as a director. And there were lots of questions and doubts and sort of,
Mm.
um, insecurities about that and thinking, how am I going to make that work? But a few, so yeah, about 5 years after that, after the kind of blur
Mm.
of young kids, just started to slowly, step by step, start getting involved in a lot of those evenings of scratch nights and short plays and
Yeah.
working with new writers. And so really beginning to kind of build teams and collaborate and working with peers, an introduction to new writing, which was really exciting to me. And alongside that, working as an assistant director as well.
Mm.
So I trained on the resident director program with the King's Head, and started working a little bit as an assistant director as well in subsidised theatre, and
Mhm.
then that kind of progressed to working as an associate in commercial theatre alongside other opportunities to make work as a director myself, and
Mm.
also working with young people in young people's theatre, in young companies with subsidised theatre, and then equally with training actors in drama schools, and also community as a director of community company and working with communities as well,
Mm.
non-professional participants as well, which is and has been a big part of my work and what I also love about
Yeah.
and the things I've been lucky to do. So kind of that's been my journey to here, really.
Nice. Yeah, it's great. I mean, I'm going to ask you questions about your degree, like your psychology and anthropology, and how that sort of fit
Yes.
into the work there in just a moment. But you mentioned there, as your Sam Kogan, who you trained with and stuff,
Yeah.
who was taught by a student of Stanislavski. Did the name Lee Strasberg ever come up at all? Did you ever look into any of his work or anything like that?
It came up, but it wasn't anything that we studied in great detail. But it was only because we definitely, and part of our training was looking back at other practitioners' work across the board, and Lee
Sure.
Strasberg definitely did come up. But actually, what I remember that for the most part was really kind of developing and digging further into this particular area of actor and director training that he was developing as a kind of offshoot,
Mm.
and inspired very much by and built very much on the foundations of Stanislavski.
Yeah, yeah. I think because there's a preconception that Stanislavski was all about method acting, and I think it's been misconstrued
Yeah,
heavily in the
yes,
media. It's not what
it
we
was
think
not
it
that.
is. It's
Yeah,
not
that's
living
true.
in the jungle. Don't get me wrong. I love Daniel Day-Lewis. I think he's
Yeah,
a phenomenal actor. He's one of my inspirations. But I
yeah,
think what he does to prepare, if these stories are true, of course, is that's not method acting. It's not going and living as the character for 6 months in the jungle or walking around New York with a big hat on saying you're Bill the Butcher. It's actually a sensory experience. Now, hopefully I'm getting this right. I was helped by a great teacher called Alam Orion over in the US. So Alam, if you are listening, I'm going to try my best not to get this wrong. But it's from what I remember, it's all a sensory experience. It's hugely imagination based,
yes,
driven. So you
yeah,
visualize something happening, and then you react. I think it's Meisner, who's also another, you know,
yeah,
sort of thread in the Stanislavski sort of system, along with Stella Adler, is that it's like as if it was happening to you and stuff like that.
yeah,
Now, it's not for everyone. Don't get me wrong, because it can be quite triggering for some people. But it's all about visualizing things and understanding what it would be like if you were in that situation in your real life. So you're not the character, you are Audrey having this experience, or you're Ollie having this experience. And yeah, so I think it's been heavily misconstrued, hasn't it? It's not what
yeah,
people think it is.
yeah, absolutely. No, that's right. And a lot of it is, if I was in those circumstances, yeah, and holding those thoughts from anyhow, yes, but from that character's life,
Yeah,
how
yeah, yeah.
would I react? But again, that's why every actor is going to bring their own, naturally, and as they should. You bring your own affinities to every role. That's why, of course, everyone is, going to be a very or slightly different version, of course,
Mm.
every time.
Yeah, it's all
The risk
different.
of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to quickly get in. We were talking just before we came on. You did a workshop at the RSC, and I mentioned this in the intro, with the great Peter Brook
Yes.
as well. Of course, anyone who doesn't know, who wrote The Empty Space, which is one of the leading theatre books, I think, of our time. You know, if it's
Yeah.
just anyone who wants to get an idea of what theatre is all about, read that book. It's phenomenal. And of course, he was the guy behind the famous Midsummer Night's Dream, which had the completely blank white canvas,
Yeah.
everything, and his work is just legendary. But you got to be in the room with the man himself.
Yeah,
Now,
it was incredible.
yeah.
Absolutely amazing. I think, and looking back, it was probably around 2011,
Mm,
maybe 2012, but I think 2011. Um, I was really lucky to be part of a group of directors. I think we were all assist directors who were sort of within a pool and at a particular emerging directors at a particular early career stage. And we were invited to take part in a number of workshops that the RSC were running. And maybe they're still, I'm sure they still do a version of this or something, but it was support very much for kind of emerging directors. And I remember being in touch with the RSC as a company at the time,
mm,
because I was really interested in any opportunities to work as an assistant director.
mhm.
And so being invited along to this workshop, we did lots, movement directors, and just being able to work with many of their incredible practitioners and voice practitioners. Anyhow, I won't go into that, but basically, yes, we had this one workshop. I don't think it was much more than about 10 of us. And I remember waiting in a room, and I think it might have been at the other place, which of course was kind of has been redone very much since then. But at the time, I remember waiting in this room. All of us were just sitting there, just knowing he was going to come in. We were chatting and everything. And think I was saying to you beforehand, I've never experienced anything like it. But there was something about as he came in and he walked slowly, and just the atmosphere and that sudden change in the atmosphere was so distinct and so palpable. It was like more silent than silence. It was so heightened. It must have been just all of us, I suppose. And again, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's really rare that we're all on the same page, if you know what I mean. I think it was very much that the atmosphere that was created is because we were all, I think, very much in that same headspace of
Yeah.
the anticipation and also the awareness of being in his presence as he came into the room, and just the I don't know, it just felt like, everything was incredibly heightened, and
Yeah.
the silence was more silent than silence, and the anticipation was just immense as
Yeah.
he came in. And I just remember him walking through very slowly, uh, and yeah, just that the atmosphere then was kind of electric, really.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal. I mean, the workshop was amazing as well, but just being able to be in that room, and I think all of us were so aware and so grateful of having the opportunity to just share that space and time with him, as well
Yeah.
as everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did he say? Did he leave any kind of pearls of wisdom with you guys? What did he say?
Oh, I'm going to have to look back over my notes. I just remember the experience of it, and different exercises that we all kind of took part in. It was just incredible. And I'm sorry, you've got me on the spot, and
That's okay. That's right.
I don't. Something might come up by the end, though. It
Yeah.
might come back to
Yeah.
me.
Good. Good. Yeah. Something will
Pearls
come.
of wisdom. It was everything about it was just phenomenal, and
Yeah.
very
Oh
grateful
God.
for
Wow. You lucky person. You lucky person. Yeah. No, I was lucky enough to see a talk that Peter Brook did, I think a few years ago. And he's talked about, I remember this one story he told, he was just fascinated by, he said he was standing at a train station and he was seeing some guy just doing these signals to other passing trains, literally just moving his arms like that
that.
in different places. And he just said, I just saw him and I just thought the way that he's not able to, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he was
Yeah.
fascinated by how just through little movements, we was able to communicate one big message
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
for a lot of people. And he just said that's really helped me drive my practice,
Yeah.
how communication is, obviously you learn your lines, of course, but how a lot of it is also non-verbal as well.
Absolutely. And that was
Yeah.
exactly what we were exploring a lot in the workshop. I remember a lot of exercises and it was a lot of at the time it was kind of picking out those moments. And actually you felt it, and I think we were all kind of on the same page with that. It was just suddenly there was just something about the alignment between the movement and what that person was thinking and saying, but yeah, non-verbally.
Mm.
And just picking out those moments that really came to life and I think felt truthful, I suppose,
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Oh,
And just how those things, yeah, just suddenly kind of click in and pop out,
mm.
spring out of the, yeah.
Fantastic, man. Peter, thank you for
Yeah.
everything that you've given us. Honestly, your legacy will live forever. I know it will.
Yeah.
So let's jump into your work. I really want to talk about this psychology and your anthropology work as well. Where did you study, by the way?
I studied at Oxford Brookes University.
Nice. For both
And then,
the
yeah,
undergrad and MSc as
but
well.
the undergrad was there, and then the MSc was at UCL.
Oh, lovely. Very, very nice. Tell me about your time at university. How was it? What was your degree like? And how has that fed into your practice?
Well, it's interesting. I think it's fed into my practice. I think in one way, one of the things that I've kind of already touched on, I suppose, is that there was something that I think I was looking for without realizing that I never quite reached. And I suppose actually in a way that kind of spurred me on to perhaps keep looking and keep finding out.
Mm.
I was because of it being an undergraduate degree, in all honesty, a lot of the psychology I found was sort of not what I was hoping. But of course, what I was hoping for was completely impractical and unrealistic because you have to lay the foundations and do the groundwork to actually specialize and really get into the things. I was really fascinated by, I think I said earlier, like abnormal psychology and criminology as well, but there were certain things that I would never really get to study in the detail that I realize now I wanted to study in. So actually, but it was a brilliant dip in to the world of psychology, and again with anthropology. But half of what we studied, it was physical anthropology, so the evolution of mankind, from a physical perspective, and then half was social anthropology, which was again, I found physical anthropology fascinating, but equally social. But I think probably it was more kind of what that then led on for me to do. But I guess actually looking at my work in theatre and my way in, very much naturally informed by all of that and my interest leading up to it and around it and beyond it, it's always been focused on the human in the story. I guess I've always been quite character focused, at least as a way in and as a way of connecting with and then kind of bringing that bigger story out, looking at the specifics and the kind of interior life and then how that makes everything incredibly universal. So
Yeah.
I've been really fascinated with character and creation of character and our consciousness and how we think and why we think the way we do, really.
Yeah. Have you sort of, why do people do what they do?
That's a really massive question. I don't have the answers really, but I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
And I guess a lot of my work is about asking those questions too.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is to do with formative experiences and our life experiences, and sometimes an element of randomness, but equally, yeah, there are so many social influences and environmental and familial and sort of the dynamic that we've grown up in. But I'm really fascinated, our position in the family, but also obviously life experiences. But I think one thing that's really fascinating is
Yeah.
a lot of the time it's about how we respond or our relationship to the things that have happened to us. So of course it's a lot. It's as a result of a lot of life experiences and a lot of events that have happened to us in our lives.
Sure.
But equally, I think what's really important is our relationship to those events. It's how we think about those things.
Hmm.
It's the same thing might have happened to a number of people, but how they respond to that or what they've taken from that or how those experiences have informed them in their life moving forwards is going to be dependent on a billion other factors that are so unique to them, their circumstances, their upbringing, their family society that they've grown up in, socioeconomic, but everything. So yeah, anyway, that's a really broad and very kind of
Yeah.
crude response, but like
Yeah.
as far as I
Yeah.
can
It's a
start.
bit of an impossible question, I know, but I
But
try.
yeah, but I am really fascinated in that and how we
Yeah.
find that within a text and clues that we look for. And anyway,
Sure. Yeah, I mean, is it? I'll tell you what. It's one thing you ask of your actors, particularly if someone's playing a character which has had, say, a lot of stuff happen to them. That's yeah. Say it's more whatever, like the obstacles that the character has. Is one question you ask them? What is your relationship to that event, or what do you think the character's relationship is like to that event that has shaped their experiences throughout the play?
yes, I think so. And I think hopefully I'm going to answer your question like this, and hopefully what I'm going to say is it will speak to what you've asked me.
Of course.
I think what I'm interested in, I think what I will do is when I'm reading a play or when I'm thinking about a character, it's all in the text. So it's like it's looking for patterns of thinking or thoughts that the character might have that we see kind of patterns of that repeat
Mm.
themselves or perhaps come up in specific circumstances, but it's kind of looking at them and then rewinding, going backwards and thinking, okay, what might what events might have happened to have given that to have been one of many inputs to that pattern of thinking or to those thoughts. Does that make sense? So it's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
being a little bit of a detective, but always focusing on the text, looking at what is there in the first place, and then kind of working backwards like a bit of a detective in that way, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
But
Of
again,
course.
all these things that I'm talking about are things that I just find really fascinating, but
Mm.
I don't tend to bring into the room,
Okay, interesting.
into a rehearsal process. It's just often it's something that I would do in just something that I enjoy thinking about and will think about in prep sometimes.
Yeah.
And it always just depends in terms of how much and how relevant and how useful even is that to even bring in to the space. It invariably kind of all bleeds in some way or another, but
Okay.
not necessarily in an overt way.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
I've just got an idea. I've had an idea in my head just now. I'm just going to ask you about particular character in Shakespeare. It's one of the big ones. I'm going to ask you about Hamlet. So, like, you look at how because there's so many different. Everyone's got a different interpretation about it, but ultimately, I think we all settle on the core elements to it. He's a young man trying to find his way in the world. He knows something isn't right. He's being visited by his dad. He's the spirit of the ghost of his father saying he was murdered, and he's trying to figure out what the hell is going on in this lifetime, in this world, in this something is rotten in the state of Denmark, I think is the line and all that stuff. So if I was to give you Hamlet, Audrey, how would you read him?
Do you know, I'm going to say really honestly, I won't be able to because I haven't super studied that play. I've not directed it, and actually, I'll
Okay.
be really honest with you that I will just give you a terrible answer,
Okay.
and I'm not equipped to answer it.
Okay.
I'm really
It's all right.
sorry. Yeah, but that's not. I'm not being difficult with it at all. It's just
No, no,
genuinely
no, no, no. Just
not. Yeah,
yeah. No, it's all right. So we can
but yeah, but
try
I'd
again.
be interested to jump in more to that.
Yeah, sure. That's one for the future. It's one for the
Yeah,
future.
for sure.
Cool. So when you work with actors, so you get everyone in on the first day, and then obviously you do the like initial like, oh hi, how are you? What's your name? Blah blah blah. So like, how do you like to build the world of a play from day one up until opening night?
Um, I guess so. I tend to, and again, as always, right, it will depend on, the process and how long we've actually got and
Mm,
the actors that we're working with in the particular project. But in terms of like overall, like my process, it would, when I was studying, we had an incredibly luxurious and wholly unrealistic to emulate in the outside world rehearsal period of 7 weeks,
mm.
which was a joy. And a real privilege to have. And actually, 3 weeks of that was spent doing like the analysis, like doing what you call table work now.
Hmm.
That was an incredible opportunity. But actually, as I've been working more and more, that the period for table work has got shorter and shorter.
Yeah.
So actually, for me, if I had like a 4 week rehearsal period, I think actually kind of looking back on previous productions and processes, 2 days, maybe three at the most, I
Wow.
would do as table work at the very
Yeah,
most.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
three
yeah.
days. Um, I mean, you know, who knows, right? And maybe we'd get a longer period of time, and maybe a particular play or a particular project or how we were doing it might demand more or might really benefit from more. Because sometimes I feel it's really dependent on the actors you're working with and the particular production and where it's at. And anyhow, so it really depends. But overall, I have definitely found that I find it much more helpful to definitely lay that groundwork, make sure we're all, to start asking questions, which is kind of for me what it's all about, to start kind of laying the foundations and making sure we're all in the same play and creating that world of the play. So there would be certain steps that we would go through all together. But I'm quite keen always to get up and start working through and putting things on their feet sooner
Mm,
rather than later,
mm.
and have definitely found like that there's no right or wrong with anything anyhow, but equally I find it more helpful that then things can continue and can and will continuously be fed in along the way,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
from literally day one until literally the final performance. So
Hmm.
like it never really, for me in my mind, it never really stops, that kind of that process of finding out and exploration.
Mm.
And so really those first few days of table work would be for me just about kind of kicking off and getting the ball rolling and beginning to create the world and making sure that we're all within that same world and creating shared pictures and impressions of the world that we're creating and
Mm.
of the play and relationships between characters, and just kind of, yeah, just making sure that that's all aligned and that
Mm.
we're all in the same world together.
Yeah.
And then that we would just continue that work day by day as we're working through the play on our feet. And so things can continuously get fed in and questions are continuously being asked and things. And really, so for me, it's very much, as I'm sure it is for everybody, but it feels very much a process of like layering up and making that world as rich and textured and complex and truthful and giving as much depth and clarity and life as possible. But
Yeah.
really that for me, what I found works the best and feels exciting and also supports the actors process as well so far has been laying the groundwork for the first few days and then just continuing that as we go on, but
Mm.
on our feet and just feeding it in
Yeah.
a more active way for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Because I think I've spoken about this on previous episodes. Is that when you walk now, there's some sort of science to say that that helps to stimulate memory when you start walking.
Oh yeah,
You,
yes.
you can't do it sitting down. You can't. Yeah, I remember speaking to someone who said, if you read like Lady Macbeth or something, and you sit down and you read it, and you go, God, I sound really good as Lady Macbeth. Yeah, and then you stand up, and then suddenly your brain goes, What?
I
What?
know, it's fascinating, isn't it? I know that's so true. And I think
Yeah.
that was something that I found very much very early on when I finished my training and started working, and I'd start working on short plays
Mm,
in my work as a director. It would be on short plays with brilliant writers, new writers on new writing. And I remember I had a bit of a fear of working with actors who weren't trained in the same way as I was, with the same kind of approach and process, because I just thought, oh, how are we going, and again, of course, it's like anything, isn't it? You just sort of start walking and doing it, and you realize, oh, it's just words. We
mm.
all want the same thing, and we're all, and a lot of the time it's like, oh, I would have maybe a slightly different term. It's terminology sometimes. It's like, oh, okay, so you might say wants or objectives or purposes or intentions or any other million things that people might refer to as
Yeah,
like
yeah,
what drives a character forwards within the circumstances. Or again, sometimes anyway. So all of those things, just kind of realizing and just working out, how we will work together. And so that fear gradually went, because and it also went with me kind of spending longer. I kind of initially replicated how I trained. And so we spent longer around the table. And then as soon as we'd stand up, I'd be like, 1 minute, where is everything? It had gone. You know, like you said there was nothing there. And I was like, what's going on? And that was even sometimes with actors who had trained in the same way. And I was like, 1 minute, you know, so actually, and then realizing through kind of practice that actually you can feed things in and actually, you know, it's actually easier and just kind of slowly layering it up because it's impossible suddenly.
No,
Connection and synthesis, I suppose, building it up.
That's a good word. Synthesis of like feelings. I don't know, but but it's interesting because I remember speaking to Adrian Schiller, who sadly is a fantastic actor. Sadly, is no longer with us. But I remember saying to him in our episode, if you sit down and just do table reads all the time, it's almost like you're writing a academic paper. You're putting the world of the play in words, but it's already in words. You don't need any more words to it. But I think he made a point of saying that, if you look at, I think Tom Stoppard-Leopoldstadt was on at the time, and I think they probably spent a lot of time discussing because it's set in Germany during the time of the Nazis and, concentration camps, etc. So discussing that. But, I feel like a production is so much more like you said there, as soon as you get on your feet, and then you can see that in performance that they've got a natural connection to each other through the energy in the space and everything. And ultimately that builds better performances because ultimately we're living a human experience on stage, not something that's written down in academic work at all. Not something that you read. You don't go to the theatre to read stuff. You go there to be, well, entertained or to be opened up into a different perspective of what life is and what some people have been given, and then you understand, oh right, and then of course it's relatable as well, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. But equally, like you were saying that as well, like actually if those foundations as well, if those shared elements of the world of your play and production are explored together as well, then also when you start standing up, very lightly, a very thin layer of something is there, right? The magic of that as well, and of that imagined world and what we're all creating together. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, talk a lot about when you're talking about visualize, and this kind of visual imagery and the imaginative space. And thinking a lot as we do in like creating pictures and impressions of the world. Because again, when we read a play, we naturally absorb all of those things, and I think that's the thing. It's like, sometimes we're not looking like forcing our brains to find something, but like if we've read a play, it's quite easy to kind of look back and be like, and we'll kind of refer to something in a character and be like, oh, well, I have an impression that there's something about him that, let's say this particular character speaks without thinking first. And again, like we will have all picked that up, very lightly. It's not like we're looking for something in a hard way. It's light work, but it's anyhow. So just kind of going back to thinking about process and like world building and creating and just beginning that, and then exactly having that as you start standing up, and then just feeding in more and more and more, and kind of encouraging everyone to keep asking those questions and keep answering them and answering them.
Yeah, I remember speaking to someone who said, when no matter what character you play, you leave a part of you in the character, but the character leaves something in you. It might not be big, it might not be very small, but it leaves something in you. So like if you were playing a character who was uber confident and you weren't so confident, but you remember what it's like playing that role every night, and it just kind of rubs off. And I remember doing because do you know who Alan Bennett is? The History Boys, Habit of Art and stuff. I did the History Boys once, and I still quote little bits of that just in life in general. And funny enough, I mentioned Hamlet earlier. I remember there's a line in it where it goes, treachery, seek it out. And I was like, where's that line from? I never knew. And I saw Hamlet a few years later, and I was just like, oh my God, that's where it comes from. Yeah. Was that brilliant line from Othello at the end where he said, wash me in steep down gulfs of liquid fire. And that was on right at the beginning of it when the character Hector just sort of silences the class. And I'm going, Where did that come from? It's a Shakespeare and how it all intertwines together. Anyway, but
Incredible, isn't it? Yeah, how it
it's
sticks.
amazing. Yeah, I suppose as a director, and I've spoken to writers about this. Like when you, it's like, do you sort of like people watching? Do you like looking at people and just like observing things? And someone will just do something a little bit crazy or something really subtle, and you're going,
Yeah.
actually, that reminds me of that character. Or, oh, I'm going to use that in something else, or suggest that to the actor playing this. Is that something that you do?
I don't actively do it for that, and I don't actively do it. I think I just naturally do enjoy. I'm really fascinated by people,
Yeah.
and always have been. And I guess that was also one other thing actually that when you were asking before about my interest in the arts and also directing in some way. But I also I think I've always been fascinated by people and always watched people and kind of enjoy observing.
Mm,
And just find it fascinating and find people really fascinating and
yeah.
inspiring. And so yes, I mean, sometimes I don't necessarily, and I'm not sure that I've ever necessarily done it and referred directly to something, but sometimes I might have even like used something as an example or something. But yeah, so I think everything informs everything. So to
Mm,
some extent, absolutely, that does inform my work, me, how I think about things. Sometimes, I'll just understand something by looking at somebody, or sometimes I'll watch a moment and something really jumps out at me, or it feels really extraordinary.
yeah.
And then I'll think about why that was and what that thing was. And sometimes then there's a connection between that's what I really love about making theatre, or
Mm.
moments between characters. So yeah, absolutely. I really, it's a long way of answering is
No, no,
yeah,
no, not at all. Not at all.
really, really enjoy watching people. And I think naturally do that quite a lot,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
not with a direct purpose to bring it back into my work. But I think it just naturally kind of just
yeah. It's like a
how I
natural
think
muscle or
and
something, isn't it?
understand people. And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. I just a question that came into my head there was just going back to your degree just for a
Yeah.
little moment. Psychology and anthropology, of course. Was there like one thing or one or two things from your time at university, undergrad and postgrad, when you did your MSc, that really sort of stuck out with you? Was there something that you learned along the way which you were like, oh wow, that's very true, or really really interesting, or something that's really stuck with you even today?
Um, Lots of really fascinating little factors that actually have nothing to do with my work now. Like in medical
Yeah.
anthropology, I was really fascinated by which is kind of what the study was different approaches to different cultures' approaches to health and illness.
Mm,
There are lots of tiny little bits of trivia and things, yes, but I have to be really honest, not anything that like directly informs or has kind of affected my work as a director now, but
yeah.
also like a lot of my years studying that are a little bit of a blur, I have to be honest, in terms of sort of what yeah, though for me at that age, yeah, there was a lot of other things going on. And so
Yeah, sure.
I think there's not my main memory from it really, and then my main takeaway was actually that I really, really wanted to get in further
Mm,
and do more, I suppose. But of course, that was undergraduate, and
yeah.
of course, that was also probably maybe a reflection of me, and maybe that I didn't, without a doubt, didn't mind that opportunity to study those subjects
Mm,
in the way to the degree that I could have done.
yeah.
For lots of reasons. But yeah, so
Yeah.
there's regret with that as well.
Nah.
But yeah,
But it's a
yes,
continuous journey where we learn
yes,
every step along the
absolutely.
way. It's
We
good.
sure do. We do.
Cool. So we talked about directing and stuff. I also want to ask you about I said in the intro, your work on the National Theatre's New Voices program as well.
Yeah,
And particularly looking at new work, new writers, and of course you mentioned like going to scratch seasons and hearing new plays and stuff like that. So,
mm,
so what sort of key advice do you give to writers as well? Like, or what's like the thing that you talk about the
yeah.
most when you read new stuff?
But that project was I think it was called New Views, and
New,
it was the National Theatre, yeah, and so it was a playwriting competition for young people, and so yeah, and through that I was really really lucky to work with a lot of young writers. I think that the probably from and actually very much formed from my time co-facilitating that London hub, which I was
Mm,
really lucky to do for about a good 5 years, that I co-facilitated with an incredible playwright called Brian Mullin. Um, I learned a huge amount in that time, and actually, and from that, and then working as a script reader quite a lot as well. Since that, I think one of the things that I'll often come back to is wanting to draw the writer's voice through as fully as possible,
mm,
and really find out what it is. Sounds really basic, but like, what's the play about for you? What is the most, something that I'll often ask is like, what is the most exciting and difficult question
mm,
that, what is the central is often question or idea that really, really excites you about your play the most? What is it that you really, really want to explore? Because a lot of the time, of course, there's many, many brilliant ideas. And of course, you can
mm,
thread and interweave a lot of brilliant and exciting ideas. But sometimes a question that I'll ask quite often is that it's just, and it's a lot of the time, it's for me to really understand, because a lot of the time, I think, or sometimes what can happen is that the play starts off being about something, and then maybe for whatever reason, and it might be the way that I'm reading it, it doesn't come through that clearly to me. It may be that other things kind of layer on top along the way, and so sometimes it's just wanting to pull their voice and that kind of central idea or question really
mm,
they really want to explore. So I'll often come back to that and just really want to find out what is that thing that really, really excites you? What is that really difficult question or idea or knotty thing that you find really, really exciting and that you really want to explore in your
mm.
play most?
Yeah.
And then really kind of identifying what that is, and then actually sometimes encouraging people writers to use that, if helpful, as something to inform some decisions thereafter in terms of, okay, great, and when you're sort of bringing other characters or other elements or scenes and looking at different ideas or narrative threads, how are they driven? How do they relate to this central question, for want of a better word, right now?
Mm, yeah,
That's
yeah,
something that I'll often ask or be really interested to talk about and want to really draw out. Or if I've had an idea that it feels to me like it feels very much at the moment that it's about this, or it could be about this, and sometimes it's not quite clear, and so wanting to pull that through a little bit
mm,
more, or wanting to find out from them what exactly is the thing that they really want to explore.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's almost like each character has. We talked earlier about things that happen in their lives, and of course, as writers, then I would imagine that you've got to find a reason why they do what they do, because ultimately you are the creator of this universe, of this play's universe, and you're asking yourself, why is this character in this situation? Why does he or she want to talk about this? Why do they want to do all this stuff? And it just goes back to, again, sort of mention your degree again, but about stuff that has happened to us, upbringings, etc. We've all had very, very different experiences, but it's showing that that there's more to life than what people realize. And I think theatre is a brilliant way of doing it, particularly different opinions and perspectives on everything. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
would that be one of the reasons? Because I know that you love truthful theatre. You love theatre that tells the truth and all these things. And yeah, so tell me a bit more about that. What is it about truthfulness in theatre that makes you happy?
Um, I guess it's probably a few things. I think on the one hand, I guess I'm really interested, as everybody is, in in acting that is emotionally truthful.
Mm,
Uh, I think I've always been really fascinated by the fact that, and I remember even as a kid thinking that when people talk, I remember adults sometimes talking, and I remember getting the impression that that something didn't match, like
mm,
what they were saying and there was some mismatch.
yeah,
And so I guess I'm interested in an emotional truth in the acting. I'm interested in brilliant acting, which I suppose is that,
yeah.
and that kind of everything is very layered. And I think it's at that moment when everything kind of clicks in and comes together, and that connection with, I suppose, the things that we don't say.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I've found, like when I've worked on productions, you know, when you read a play and you think, oh, that's a really great line, or that's really brilliant what they say there. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience, even as an actor or as any other creative practitioner within a process. But sometimes my favorite moments in plays are often like really random, like, you know, just really banal words or a phrase, or sometimes just moments of something that happens in a moment of silence. Sometimes it's like a look that when two characters share a look and they look at each other. There's something about that, that everything's there, if that makes sense. Or like, I don't know, I remember working on a play, and this was like one of my earliest jobs as a staff director, as an assistant director on a play called The Effect by Lucy Prebble. I remember just an incredible moment. Anastasia Hiller was playing Dr. James, and there was who was like the doctor who was overseeing the trial. And I always remember that there was a moment where she meets, it's a moment of interaction with an ex of hers, who's actually overseeing the whole trial, who works for the big pharma company who have commissioned this trial. And basically, there's a conversation between them where she finds out that he's remarried. Or she's find out that he's divorced his previous wife, and that he's engaged, I think, to somebody else, or maybe he's even got married. And it was just a moment there where I think there was like a brief pause, and then she says, you know, oh, congratulations. You know, on the page, it's nothing, but the life and everything was that you got everything. And it was also, there was something about the contradiction of that, because actually the words totally pulled against what was absolutely going on under the surface, if that makes sense. So there's something about that really excites me, because it feels incredibly truthful, and it's absolutely like, it's what we do, it's how we live. You know, so many, you know, it's completely natural that happens, but it's that it was that multi-layeredness of that, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's what I'm. So that's so good, truthful acting really excites me. I think it's when there's that connection, like I was saying before, about with a playwright as well. When there's something to do with the writer's voice coming through as well. So there's just something about all of those elements kind of pulling together and being aligned or being synthesized and together, and that there's the coexistence, I suppose, of the multi-layeredness of life and our psyches and worlds of a play, even as well. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's
of course it does.
But that's absolutely, that's one of the things that really excites me about making theatre and making work, and it's those moments, and it's the pursuit of everything coming together, I suppose.
Well put. Yeah, absolutely. No, a couple of examples popped into my head there. Obviously, this isn't a theatre example; it's more screen. But just the late great Maggie Smith, who sadly left us last year. Of course, famous for all kinds of things, but Downton Abbey in particular. Like, she could just do one look or something like this, just like, and she just, and it communicates.
Everything's there, isn't it? It's just the whole world, the whole life of a character, you know, and the richness of that context as well. It's just like, which I guess is what I'm really excited by and interested in, and what I'm always working towards, is filling in, you know, and just creating as rich and multi-layered a world and full of thoughts and events and life, really. So, it's just when everything's there, as it is in life.
Yeah, for sure. And I think so the other example is, did you see the David Hare play Skylight at all?
I didn't.
No, if you get the chance, go and see it. It's wonderful. But I think sort of the core of it, without giving too much away, but it's basically a love story between a man who's much older than the woman. And it's played brilliantly by Bill Nighy and Carey Mulligan and the other actor. I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name if you're watching or listening. Sorry, but but basically at the core of it, just you see it's a love story, but actually at the core of it, it's more of a political message. Because I know David Hare loves his political plays, and he said the main reason why I wrote it was because we'd had governments for years telling us that people in society who weren't entrepreneurs weren't productive, and they should just find something else to do. And of course, that's total horseshit. And there's a brilliant moment towards the end where Carey Mulligan, well, the character's called Kira, and she has this brilliant just monologue that comes out of nowhere when she starts talking about, I'm tired of these right-wing fuckers, how they won't lift a finger themselves for anyone else. And suddenly she goes on this big speech about how, you know, sort of like people look down on you, who they're entrepreneurs, and they say things to you like, well, excuse me, well, I wouldn't do it like that. It's like, Audrey, I wouldn't do your job like that. You know, I've got more experience than you in this front. No, you don't. No, you don't. It's like, stop looking down and see actually what the country, I think it was written in 1994, I think it was. So I don't know what the government was at the time, but basically saying, look, open your eyes. This is how people live. This is how, if you're not a rich banker or in parliament and you're something else, this is how life is. Not everything is handed to you on a silver platter. You don't wake up in a big luxury house and get fed by a silver spoon in your mouth. See how life really fucking is. And if you're not willing to help people with your own time, with your own effort, then why don't you just fuck off? And the audience applauded. And actually, you can hear in the live recording, someone in the audience, you just hear them go, here, here. And and I thought, and that just shows not only that's what theatre can do, because you're sharing an experience in a room of people talking about very, very real things. And the fact she got a little applause as well was, I mean, not only because she played it really well, but it was like, yeah, this is what's happening. Yeah, this is what's going on out there, and this is what theatre can do, and all that kind of stuff, and show that there's a lot more to it than people realize and everything. Oh, but yeah, if you ever get the chance to see it.
I wonder, maybe if you said it was empty live, it might well be accessible. Empty home. I'm doing
if you go
empty at home, but I might find it there, right?
Yeah, for sure. Because I know you do. You know, you've done some work in the National Theatre Studio as well, which is very near the archive. So if you go,
exactly.
So and
it's best accidentally kept secret. It's the most phenomenal.
It's
resource.
Brilliant. I don't know why people
I didn't even know about. I mean, several years ago, I found out about it, but it and it's open and free to anyone. You don't have to be working in theatre. I'm just doing a bit of plug for it now, but it's phenomenal though, isn't it? Really, you could. I don't know if you've kind of used it before. I've used it before.
I have used it. Yeah, it's good.
For like watching, sometimes just out of interest, but also sometimes like in prep for a project or something that I was working on. But equally knowing that they've got the book. From the original production, they've got designs,
production notes, the whole shebang.
Absolute, a treasure trove, isn't it? It's incredible.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's not more well known. But hey, we're doing a plug for it now. We're going to get it booked up. But so if you're stuck for anything to do one day, Audrey, go down to the archive and watch Skylight by David Hare. Anyone else doing it, it's a brilliant play, absolutely brilliant. Cool. So I want to get this in actually, because one of your most recent projects was working on Stranger Things in London, The First Shadow, which has gone down an absolute storm. Everyone loves the play. I think it's got great reviews, and it's still here. It's survived. It wasn't just like a 12-week thing. It's actually turned into nearly a 2-year journey for that play at the Phoenix Theatre.
That's right, the Phoenix Theatre,
Yeah, so tell me about your involvement in that.
So I think, how long was it in the making? I don't know. Before I was involved, maybe 5 years, maybe more. So there were, and again, and I'll plug it slightly, but there's a documentary, Behind the Curtain.
Yes.
Just showing a little bit about the making of the project. But basically, I got involved around kind of Easter time 2023 as associate director. And it was around that time that there were workshops being held. There had been workshops previously in LA and in for sure before that, a number of them, I believe. And when I was involved, this was for the UK workshops, and we did some workshops in May. And so Stephen and Justin, but obviously they had been creating this idea for quite a long time, and they'd approached Kate as the writer, and obviously first and foremost Netflix and the Duffer Brothers. So basically, so we worked, there were workshops for several weeks and then those workshops, as they do, right? You ask a question and then more questions come and then more questions come, and it's just like a constant thing. So, you start doing work on a thing and then it's like, okay, we can now see that we need to do more. So there was a workshop in May that I was involved in. And then that led to further workshops in August to further explore the things that had come up in May. Script was consistently developing and being rewritten and restructured, and whole characters were coming in, going out. Anyhow, and the project continued to develop. And then, so then I was with the project through obviously all of those kind of auditions and processes to bring people in for those things, and then also for the rehearsals, and then we moved into the Phoenix Theatre, where we had a 4-week tech, which was brilliant, but through that time the play was still developing, and there was still constant work on scenes, and constant writing and more writing and more writing. The whole creative team was phenomenal. The whole acting company were incredible, from all the actors involved in the workshops, some of whom continued on through into the rehearsals for the for the production. But all were incredibly formative in the building and the creation of what is now Stranger Things: The First Shadow. And we went into the theatre, and but continued working, and then there were 4 weeks of previews where the work never stopped. 2 rooms pretty much running consistently throughout every stage of that process. There were 2 there was Justin and Stephen, so really they were working together and alongside each other and concurrently. So there was a lot going on. But please, if there are specifics, that's useful for me to speak to on that. But so I was involved through all of that. So through the script evolving, and the story and the structure of that, and just an amazing privilege and a real joy to have been involved in, to see everything develop and how it all was created, but also to be able to work with that company, and the actors as well were phenomenal, and the way they took everything on and were incredibly flexible, and just embraced all the change, and just gave everything to make it what it is.
So were you the one also giving notes alongside Justin and Stephen?
I would give some notes, yes. Absolutely. And those notes would sometimes come like and they varied, like notes do, right? Sometimes it was literally, but it was all hands on deck. So, sometimes in the rehearsal room we were rehearsing scenes, and really it was a big company. There's about 32, a cast of 32. So also, after a scene, I think everyone would kind of jump to different actors and just pass little thoughts on, or little suggestions, or little ideas. So really everyone was just making it better and better. And all of that work was in pursuit of making it the very best thing it could be. And then, and through previews as well. Absolutely. Things were sometimes passed on to me to pass on, but equally I would pass on thoughts and notes myself.
I was fascinated by, because if you go to London, you see a show, you must think, when I was young, thinking, oh, they must have thought of that all up on day one, and it hasn't changed one bit. The writer just sat down with a blank piece of paper, wrote it all out, no edits, nothing at all. And actually now, having been a part of this, you realize that day one to opening night is huge. And like you said, 5 years from that initial draft to like opening night, where it's maybe I think
more than 5 years actually, but yes, absolutely, or even the idea in the making, yes. And I don't know exactly at what point, but I think it's close to that.
But a really good amount of time in between.
Absolutely.
How it can just chop and change the whole time, and it's just like, wow.
Very much so. I think that's true. And I remember listening to somebody talking about it, which just resonated with me, because I thought that's so true. Is like, sometimes from the outside, if you don't work in theatre, or if you're right at the beginning of starting your journey in theatre, in whatever capacity you work in it can sometimes be intimidating looking, when your interaction with theatre is often as an audience member. You just go and see the show. So it can be sometimes intimidating, because it's just kind of like, oh my God, this kind of polished production. But of course, being able to have the opportunity and the privilege to kind of be part of the process and see a first draft that maybe isn't amazing, or that's got some loads of wobbly bits in it, to first day standing a scene up, and like there's very little there, even for like a very high profile actor, or somebody who's just graduated, that it's a work in progress, and that it's not going to be this polished whole, production and never can be, right? And so it's a work in progress, and everything isn't great from the start, and
Yeah,
that
sure.
work and together and keep making it better and better.
Yeah, I think so. In terms of the story itself, obviously, we won't touch on any spoilers in here, by the way, because we want people to go and see it. For fans of the show, how would you, where is the show? Where do
So
we
the show
find, yeah,
so
what's
the
happening?
show is set in Hawkins in 1959. I think in the series, Series 5 obviously isn't out yet, but I believe they finished filming it. But
Mm,
the series, I think, starts in 1983. So this is like this is a prequel. So this, really simply put, is like the origin story. It's the origin of Henry Creel. So Henry Creel, otherwise known as sometimes number one, or as yes, sometimes known as one or Vecna in series 4, because
yeah,
he features
it's
very
Vecna.
heavily in
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
This is very much looking at him as a young boy moving to Hawkins,
mm,
and what he was like before, how we meet him in series 4.
yeah,
Um, but equally, we also then see a lot of the characters who we know as adults from the TV series. We see them in high school. So Joyce and Hopper and
yeah.
Bob and other characters. Yeah. So there are a lot of little kind of Easter eggs and lots of. So hopefully, and it is very much something that people really enjoy, with no prior knowledge of the world of Stranger Things and the characters of Stranger Things. And equally, if you are a fan or have watched, then there'll be lots of little Easter eggs and little
Oh, good.
surprises or little links and threads
Yeah,
that are exciting to find and kind of align as you
yeah,
watch
yeah.
as well. So yeah, there's a lot in there. But yeah, so that's where it sits. It's a before, it's an origin story.
Oh, good. Yeah, it sounds
Yeah.
fascinating. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the last series, I think I binged watched in about 2 days. Honestly, it was.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that was good. That was good. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
because it was interesting because it was released in two parts, wasn't it? Because the first batch of episodes was released, and then the last two or three, because I think they were behind on editing or
Oh, I
something.
think that's right.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
so they said you can have the first bit here, but we need time to get the last few just
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
And boy, did they! And we look
Yeah.
forward to. I think this is the last season now coming
I
up. I think
think
this is the
so. Yeah.
finale. Yeah. So, like you say, I think they've probably filmed it now. They're probably in the editing room right now. But yeah, God, we look
Mm.
forward to it. Yeah.
Mm.
So, yeah, that's God. Just the journey between just that and where they are now is just it's amazing. But yeah, no, it shows that I had a question. Now it's just disappeared. What was I going to say? So yeah, let's talk about your direction on video games. I want to get that in very very
Mm.
quickly as well. Not your voice. Sorry about that.
No, no,
But
no, it's absolutely fine.
yeah. So how do you go from the theater where you're in amongst people to like in a voice booth where suddenly it's almost a completely different ball game? What's it like?
I mean, yeah, and it is. It's very different in a lot of ways, but also there's a huge overlap as well. There's a massive crossover.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. It's a very different environment. I'm working in a studio, working with a sound engineer, um, always next to me. So this is as a voice director. But then equally, it's as my experience, although you can work with more than one actor at once in a voice direction context, as well as obviously in motion capture or performance capture or facial capture as well. But so in mocap, obviously you're often working with larger groups of actors, and that's a whole different thing. But equally in voice direction, you can sometimes work with a few actors at once, but my experience has always been working with one actor at a time.
Yeah.
So it just feels like a very kind of focused one-to-one. But in terms of the setup and how it works is I will be in the studio next to a sound engineer, and I've got the script there, and we're joined by the client, who is invariably somebody from the game developer team. Very often a writer, can often be a group of people who've been involved many, many years before this point where we actually get to working with actors and actually putting voices to the characters. So they will have developed, the whole concept and the lore and the design of the game and everything. So it's already a very, very developed stage by the time that I get to come into that world.
Nice.
But for me, a lot of it has felt very similar, and a lot of my experience, I think, as a director in theatre has really, really helped with this. I mean, on the one hand, working with actors, of course, and the process from theatre, being able to like create a world and world building, and being awake to context and the detail of performance as well. So being able to kind of bring that process in, although the way we work is quite different and we'll work quite quickly. But it's really been helpful. I guess on the one hand, working with writers, sometimes it feels quite similar to me to working with a writer, or it feels that there are similarities when I'm collaborating with a client and finding out as quickly and concisely and clearly as I can what they're looking for and what the world of the game is. So there's a communication, there's a collaboration there that I guess feels very similar in lots of ways to what you create when you're working with a writer on a new play. So there's a small team of us in the room. So there'll be the developers, myself, the sound engineer, and then the actor in a different studio where I can see them, and so giving as detailed and context rich direction as I can, and kind of finding out what the world of that moment is, and just being as specific as we can to get as rich and detailed and kind of truthful and complex as we are performance that we can. But and also a joy, like with theatre, jumping into many different worlds, often very fantastical in games, which is also exciting, and literally, wizards and dragons and other worlds, literally,
whole shebang.
everything. So it's joyful, and so in lots of ways, you're kind of using very similar muscles. So it's in a lot of ways, there's a lot of transferable skills.
Particularly vocally as well, because and I'm a big Call of Duty fan. I remember the fifth one, I think it's set in World War II, and Gary Oldman and Kiefer Sutherland did voices on that. I remember Gary Oldman saying that you go into a studio, and he played someone called Sergeant Reznov, who was basically barking orders in everything that you did. So and he said, like, by the end of it, your throat is raw, you've screamed literally for about 3 or 4 hours, and by the end of it you're just walking out thinking, I've got nothing left. I mean, obviously it's a good indication of actors looking after themselves in that, but is that what some recording sessions are like, where you're probably listening to someone scream for about 3 or 4 hours, or particularly raise their voice for a long time?
Yes and no. I mean, sometimes I have worked on sessions like that, and so those kind of sessions are like, well, what you'd call sometimes there seems to be different words for it. Sometimes you call it barks, where it's like a lot of shouting on the whole, and it often involves lots of hot drinks and looking after your voice as well. You'd save those for the end if you've got a mixture of types of lines and dialogue that you're recording, so that obviously it doesn't make sense to do those at the beginning and then they've got hours.
No.
Equally, I think if you'd ever do those, I don't think they would ever be booked for more than, well, in my experience, you wouldn't be booked for more than 2 hours at a time, just because if you're doing that constantly, it feels like it's such a strain on the voice. It's impossible. I was recently recording with somebody. It was a 4-hour session, but we tended to kind of complete the work in maybe 3 or less. But still, that felt a little bit too much. And again, it depends on the character. Like some characters in that situation would really shout all the time, and other times it was perhaps a little more the commands were perhaps a little more threatening or a little more focused, rather than a slightly reckless scream from a different character, if you know what I mean. So it was like same context, but obviously different characters can respond differently, and one particular character was a shouter. So actually there was a point where it actually, like, we might not, and that's fine, we might not be able, you don't want to push it too far, and actually had to just keep taking a lot of regular breaks and just really looking after their voice and just trying to structure the session in a way that's going to protect them and their voices.
For sure. I think into what you said there, like, obviously you get these barking orders, as you say, but actually it's something is much more kind of calm and composed orders. Like for example, if someone says, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. And it goes, and suddenly you're going, hang on a minute. And suddenly it goes a lot further than someone going, what did you just do? Or something like that,
absolutely. And it depends on the context, right? Because sometimes you're literally in a tank screaming, and things, and shouting orders and whatever. But like, still that character may still have been able to, in the same context, just not have to project quite as much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't need
exactly
to
that.
project that. No, that's all
Yeah.
good.
So yeah, you try and find ways around that as well. But exactly, yeah, just try and be as mindful and sort of thoughtful of the actors as you can, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And keep checking in, like always, as you go.
Oh yeah, no, if we could give them lots of honey and lemon tea, that'd be
That's
good.
right.
That'd be
Yeah.
good. Keep it hydrated.
Yeah.
Audrey, this has been great. I've only just got a few more things left for you today.
Of course.
I think you mentioned off camera just before. I think you're wanting to go into you're looking to go into more screen stuff. You know, maybe do a bit more work in that sort of area. Would that be something you're interested
Oh,
in?
well, yes and no. I mean, I think it was more just that it's not an area that I've any experience in really.
Okay.
I am interested in it. I guess I'm not actively pursuing it at the moment, although I did recently shadow uh, a director for TV, just to start to see a little bit of the difference. So it's a world I don't know a huge amount about. Again, like I worked on a project that was going to be performed in a theatre, but it was around 2020. It was
Unfortunately.
called the Young Vic, called 2020. And so in the end, we ended up making it as a film. So it
Oh,
was amazing that we could still carry on working with this company of brilliant participants, but equally it was made into a film. And I really, really enjoyed that and particularly enjoyed the edit process.
mm,
So it's something I'm really fascinated in. I'm not necessarily actively pursuing it, but I'm interested,
okay.
absolutely. But yeah, I find it, exciting. But yeah, I'm also really excited to continue, evolving my practice and craft and work as a theatre director and in the world of games as well. Very
Oh
much.
yeah, for sure. No, no,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
reason I ask is that, you know, whether it's on video games, screen,
Mm.
or in the theatre, I mean, do you feel like, well, what stories do you feel like you haven't told yet that you'd like to?
Gosh, loads. I mean, in terms of like, is there a specific play that I'd like to do, or like, is there a
Yeah,
particular
yeah, well,
work that I'm drawn to, or
like a specific story, a specific truthful story that you feel isn't talked about enough, do you think?
that's a really good question. Yeah, you put me on the spot there. I don't know if there's a particular story. I'm really excited by
Or like a
those
type of
coming
theatre or
together.
type of story that you feel
Yeah,
like, yeah,
I mean, there are particular types of stories that I'm really drawn to, I suppose. I mean, um, I'm really excited by things that focus, I suppose, on the extraordinary moments, but often within the ordinary. I'm really excited by like the interior
yeah,
lives, um, but that equally that find a universality, I suppose, through that specificity. I don't know if I've got a particular focus on like a particular group of people or particular story that I want to tell. I'm really excited by how we find those really truthful and specific characters and lives and moments in perhaps sometimes more fantastical, like my interest in games, or perhaps
yeah, yeah.
interest in theatre and form, and sometimes where the worlds are less naturalistic. I'm
Mm,
really interested in how sort of incredibly naturalistic and detailed, truthful performances
yeah.
sit alongside less it sit alongside and within more abstract worlds, I suppose. Sometimes multiple worlds that coexist within a particular play or piece. So I'm really interested in kind of how those things sit alongside each other.
Mm,
So how those kind of slightly more heightened or more experimental or less literal and less naturalistic worlds meet
mm,
real people. And so sometimes I've been really drawn to stories that really look at the intersection of both and that
mm,
hold both of those things alongside each other. But again, I'm really excited by finding those really heightened moments, those moments that kind of transcend the
yeah.
ordinary, even if it's literally just an incredibly intimate moment between two people, and how that sometimes just can totally lift and heighten out of out of the mundane and the ordinary. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a fantastical world. Does that make sense? So I'm
Oh
really
yeah, yeah, of
interested in
course.
those sort of heightened moments. So whether it's the story or whether it's the world or whether it's something in particular in that exciting mix of characters and context and story, it can be anything, but just looking for those moments of heightenedness and that
Yeah.
kind of vivid, larger than life, I suppose. Those
Yeah. Well, I look forward to it. I look forward to the opening night.
yeah, I'll let you know. Yeah.
No, I look forward to it. That'd be good. Yeah. Just how things all bind together no matter what the circumstance. And it's truth more than anything, which is great.
Yeah, I'm excited about how those things sit alongside each other and
Yeah.
how they can how they can sit within a
Yeah.
less
I love
truthful world.
it. Yeah. I look forward to it. Yeah. Keep me posted on that. I'd love to hear
I
all
will
about it.
do.
Yeah.
Will do, for sure.
Just got two more questions I for you, Audrey. Just
Sure.
two quick fire ones to finish. So the first one is, what would you say was a bit of advice you wish you heard at the beginning of your career?
Um, I think I kind of along the way have heard really good bits of advice, actually. I
Hmm.
wish I'd kind of listened to them a bit more, or I wish I'd been in a place to take them on more. So I suppose like one of the things I would say, because I'm actually thinking like sometimes I think I was probably told this, but I kind of couldn't quite take it in. I think some things that I was told, take your time, um, which I've always really appreciated. Um, Start where you are. Like I often kind of think I would have often had the thought I'm not ready, or I need to wait for things to be a particular way before I go for that thing or start that project or apply for that thing or reach out to that person or potential collaborator. And actually like just start where you are. Like there's no need to wait for things to be, or looking for a perfect play. Just do the thing. Just go
Yes.
and do the thing. Just be confident, take a step like from wherever you are and start working and just keep going from where you are. So I'd say that like don't wait until you think you're ready or like until circumstances are right. There is no such thing, just start and keep going from where you are.
Mm.
I would have, yeah, liked to have listened to that a little bit more. um Trust your gut, trust your instincts. Again, sometimes for lots of reasons, particularly when you're starting out, it's easy not to, and then you look back and it's like, "Ah,
Yeah, I should have done that.
I felt that the writing was on the wall," but for lots of reasons, but we can't, that's how it goes. But actually, yeah, in hindsight, some of those things, absolutely. Um, yeah, don't overthink it. Just do it.
Yeah, just do it. Yeah,
Just do it.
it finds a way through. It finds a way. And finally, today, what would you say was an experience or experiences you've had in your career up to now that you'll never forget?
Um, some of those extraordinary moments, I suppose, like Peter Brook walking into that room.
Yeah.
Those moments in lots of productions, actually, in a lot of productions that I've been lucky to have directed. So often it feels like it's that final night or it's the opening night where it might be the way that I allow myself to watch the work at that point, but it's those moments where it kind of feels like everything comes together.
Mm.
And you kind of allow, it's probably also that moment where you kind of just allow yourself to slightly let go and just let everything settle and just see everything come together. So again, like whether it's, I don't know, the final night of a show that I directed, several weeks ago at Lambda with their brilliant graduating masters actors, or yeah, seeing a project at the Almeida kind of come together in that way. Or I directed something for the national for the winning play of the New Views competition
Mm.
years ago. But again, I got pinged by the COVID app at the time.
Oh,
So it was absolutely bizarre, but I actually had to watch the performance of it. But we couldn't have an audience because of COVID time. But I couldn't be there for their filming of the performance. So I had to watch that over Zoom. So it was kind of extraordinary being able to watch it and know that it had been held brilliantly. And obviously I'd been zooming in anyhow. But again, seeing those projects really come together and everything, the whole of it just kind of click in,
mm.
is really special. And yeah, equally, yeah, seeing something that I directed in at the English Theatre Frankfurt. Again, a moment that I wouldn't forget was also me worrying about the fact that there you have to, as a director, you have to appear on stage in the bows with the actors on the first night. So for different reasons, I won't forget that, because I was just more concerned with I don't want to fall over when I come out for this bow, which was just like really weird and not what we're used to, and not my comfort zone. But anyhow, so that was something that I won't forget. But I didn't fall over, so it was good.
I didn't
so
fall
I won't forget that. But yeah, really, genuinely, like I could say that really just for all the work that I've been lucky to make, just being able to sit back and really allow myself to see it all come together and be grateful for all the billion components and moments that have gone into that, and collaborators and brilliant creatives and actors that have pulled it together.
Yeah.
I'd say that probably is what comes to mind.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Thank God for actors, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the magic of it all coming together. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, brilliant. Audrey, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
No, you hearing your stories, hear about Peter Brook, hearing about Stranger Things and everything. And just the love of truth, I think, is just amazing. And hearing how psychology and anthropology is fed into your practice, and how we can create theatre, which leaves the audience going, wow. Because I feel like a lot of productions have that, but very few leave you with that sense of like, wow, that was something.
I feel like we're all kind of going for that, right? Something that makes us sort of breathe a little differently afterwards, moves us in some way or touches us, or just that connection, which I think is kind of what we all go for anyway, right? So,
yeah. As in Oscar Wilde, who said, I regard the theatre as the greatest of art forms because it shows a human being what it's like to be another human being. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What more could you ask for? What more could you ask for? Exactly. Audrey, thank you so much. If you just hang on, we'll finish the recording, then we'll have a little afterwards. But yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, guys.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. Guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This has been the Uncensored Critic podcast. I'll be back very, very soon. And yeah, Audrey Sheffield, thank you so much.
Thank you.